It all started on a rainy Thursday afternoon, the kind where the clouds hang low, as if they're eavesdropping on conversations. Claire Bennett sat by the window of a small cafe in downtown Charleston, stirring her coffee without really drinking it. She wasn't waiting for anyone, at least that's what she told herself. But somewhere deep inside, she was hoping for something or someone to break the monotony of her life. Claire had always been the reliable one, the girl who followed the rules, who never missed a deadline, who always had a polite smile ready. She worked as an editor for a local publishing house, reading manuscripts that rarely sparked excitement. Her days blended into each other, an endless loop of routine. Until he walked in. He was soaked from head to toe, his dark coat dripping water onto the floor, his hair slicked back by the rain. But what struck Claire was his gaze, sharp, yet distant, as if he'd seen too much, but still wanted to see more. He scanned the room, his eyes eventually landing on the empty seat across from Claire. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, his voice calm, almost rehearsed. Claire hesitated, the polite girl inside her screaming, "Of course," while her instincts whispered, "Be careful." But curiosity won. "Sure," she said, motioning to the chair. He introduced himself as Evan Carter, no job title, no small talk. Just Evan. The conversation that followed was unlike anything Claire had experienced. He asked questions that went beyond surface-level chit-chat. "What's the one thing you regret not doing? If you could relive one moment, which would it be?" Claire found herself opening up, talking about her dreams of becoming a writer, her fear of failure, her recent breakup with a man who saw her as a convenience, not a partner. Evan listened, truly listened, not just nodding but absorbing every word. There was an intensity about him that was disarming. Time seemed irrelevant. Hours passed, and the rain outside became a distant hum. By the time Claire realized how late it was, the cafe was emptying. "I should get going," she said, though she didn't want to. Evan smiled, a subtle curve of his lips that felt like a secret being shared. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked, as if it was already decided. Claire nodded. For the first time in a long while, she felt anticipation. The next day, Claire found herself dressing differently, a little more color, a little less invisible. When she arrived at the cafe, Evan was already there, waiting with 2 coffees. "I took a wild guess, black, no sugar," he said. She laughed. "Lucky guess." But was it? Their conversation dived even deeper this time. Evan spoke about philosophy, about how people wear masks to survive. Claire was intrigued but noticed how he skillfully dodged personal questions. He shared thoughts, not facts. Ideas, not history. "You like keeping people at arm's length," Claire teased. Evan looked out the window, the rain once again framing him like a melancholic painting. "Not everyone deserves to know your truth," he said quietly. Claire didn't press. Instead, she felt drawn in, as if uncovering Evan's story was now her story too. Days turned into weeks. Their meetings became the highlight of Claire's life. She caught herself smiling more, writing again, feeling alive. Friends noticed, colleagues commented, but Claire kept Evan a secret. He was her escape, her anomaly in a life of predictability. Yet there were things that didn't add up. Evan never spoke about his past, not his family, not his work. He didn't have social media. He paid in cash. When Claire suggested they meet outside the cafe, he'd always change the subject. It was thrilling and unsettling. One evening, as the cafe was about to close, Claire finally asked, "Why do you always meet me here? What's outside this place that you're hiding from?" Evan's expression changed. The warm, curious gaze was replaced with a guarded mask. "Some places are safe. Others are not," he said simply. He stood up, placed a folded napkin on the table, and left. On the napkin, in neat handwriting, were 3 words. "Don't follow me." Claire's heart raced. What was that supposed to mean? Was he in danger? Was she? The following days were a storm of thoughts. Claire went to the cafe, but Evan never showed up. Her routine felt emptier than before. She hated how invested she had become in a stranger, but the mystery was intoxicating. Then came the email. An anonymous message popped into her inbox. "If you want to know the truth, Meet me at the old railway station. Midnight. It was unsigned, but she knew it was Evan. Claire wrestled with the idea. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was everything she wasn't. But by 11:30 p.m., she was already on her way. The railway station was a forgotten relic, abandoned after the city expanded. Claire's footsteps echoed as she navigated through the darkened platforms. Her phone buzzed, another message. Platform 3. Her heart pounded as she approached. Evan stood there, but this time, he looked different. Less composed. More real. I told you not to follow, he said, but his tone lacked anger. It was laced with worry. Too late, Claire replied, standing her ground.
Even sight.
There are things about me that could hurt you, Claire. This isn't a game. Then tell me. Give me a reason to stop caring. For a moment, the night was silent. Then Evan spoke, his voice low. I'm not who you think I am. I'm not even who I thought I was. People are after me, Claire. Not because I'm dangerous, but because I know things I shouldn't. And the closer you get, the more you're at risk. Claire felt a mix of fear and defiance. Then let me choose. I'm not afraid of your secrets, Evan. He looked at her, as if trying to memorize her face. Then you need to know the truth. All of it.
Tomorrow.
But after that, nothing will be the same. The next day was suffocating. Every tick of the clock in Claire's office felt like an echo of her own heartbeat, loud and restless. Her mind wasn't on manuscripts or deadlines. It was on the words Evan had left her with. Nothing will be the same. By evening, the world outside felt quieter, as if holding its breath for what was to come. Claire stood in front of her mirror, staring at her reflection. She wasn't sure if she looked brave or foolish. Her phone buzzed. Evan, Warehouse District.
Pier 9.
Midnight. Come alone. Claire typed a reply but erased it. What was there to say? She grabbed her coat and left without looking back. The Warehouse District wasn't the kind of place you visited after dark. Rusted gates, graffiti-laden walls, and the distant hum of industrial machinery created an eerie backdrop. Pier 9 was at the very edge, where the city lights couldn't reach. Evan stood there, facing the water, his silhouette outlined by the faint glow of a street lamp. When he turned, Claire noticed something different. His eyes, usually calm and observing, now flickered with urgency. You came, he said, not surprised. You called, she replied, stepping closer. No more riddles, Evan. Tell me everything. He gestured towards an old metal staircase leading up to a derelict office overlooking the pier. They climbed in silence. Inside, dust danced in the beams of light slicing through broken windows. This place used to be my father's, Evan began. He was a data architect, built encryption systems for corporations, governments, and sometimes for people who shouldn't have had that kind of protection. Claire listened, the pieces starting to form. When he died, I found a hidden drive. On it, records, names, transactions. Blackmail material. Things that could ruin people. Dangerous people. He paused. I was supposed to destroy it, but curiosity got the better of me. Claire's chest tightened. You still have it? Evan nodded. Encrypted. Hidden. But they know I didn't erase it. They've been watching, waiting for me to slip. Who's they?
Claire asked.
Evan's jaw clenched. People with power. People who can erase someone's existence with a single keystroke. And now, because of me, you're on their radar. Claire felt a chill crawl up her spine. This wasn't just a dark secret. It was a ticking bomb. But why me? Why let me in? She asked. Evan's expression softened. Because you're the only real thing I've had in years. You didn't want anything from me. You just listened. A fragile silence fell between them, broken only by the distant lapping of water against the pier. Claire reached out, placing her hand over his. So what now? Evan looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. Now we run. Or we fight. But you need to choose, Claire. I can't make that decision for you. That night, Claire didn't sleep. She sat on her bed, staring at the encrypted drive Evan had slipped into her coat pocket. It was small, ordinary-looking, but its contents could shatter lives. She thought about her own life, the predictability, the routines. And then she thought about Evan, the man who had turned her world upside down without even trying. By morning, she had made her choice. The cafe felt different when she walked in. The air was heavier, the corners darker. Evan sat at their usual spot, eyes scanning every face that walked past. "You've decided," he said as she sat down. Claire nodded. "I'm not running." A faint smile crossed his lips. "Then we fight." They spent hours planning. Evan explained how the drive was the key to a vast web of corruption: politicians, corporate giants, shadow brokers. Claire suggested leaking the data anonymously, using her contacts in publishing and media. But Evan shook his head. "It's not that simple. Once this goes out, they'll know who's responsible. There's no turning back." Claire's gaze was steady. Maybe it's time someone stood up to them. That evening, as dusk bled into night, Evan took Claire to a small apartment he kept in the old part of the city. It was bare bones, a safe house, not a home. Laptops, burner phones, and maps covered the dining table. Evan showed her the decryption process, the layers of security designed to keep intruders out. Claire was no hacker, but her sharp mind picked up quickly. They worked side by side, two strangers now bound by a common cause. As hours passed, a different kind of silence enveloped them, not tense, but intimate. Every glance, every accidental brush of hands, was charged with unsaid emotions. "You're not like I imagined," Claire whispered. Evan looked up. How did you imagine me? I thought you were a drifter, someone running from the world. But now I see you're just tired of fighting alone." Evan's eyes softened. "And you? What are you running from, Claire?" She smiled sadly. "A life that never surprised me." Later that night, as fatigue weighed on them, Claire found herself on the small balcony, overlooking the quiet street. Evan joined her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "You should have stayed away," he said, though his tone lacked conviction. "Too late," she replied, taking the cup. The city hummed below, oblivious to their small rebellion. "I never wanted to pull anyone into this," Evan murmured. Claire turned to him. "Maybe you didn't pull me in. Maybe I was looking for a way out." Their eyes met, and in that moment, the lines between their complicated truths blurred. The kiss that followed wasn't passionate, but honest. A quiet declaration in a world that had given them too many reasons to doubt. The next day was chaos. An anonymous tip, carefully crafted by Claire and Evan, had been sent to a reputable journalist known for exposing high-level corruption. Within hours, encrypted files were being analyzed, names were being connected, and the storm was brewing. But so were the consequences. Evan's phone buzzed, a message that made his face pale. "They know," he said simply. Before Claire could ask, the building's power cut. A sign. "They're coming." Evan grabbed Claire's hand, pulling her towards the fire escape. They moved quickly, navigating the narrow alleys of Charleston like ghosts. But it was clear they were being watched. A black SUV turned the corner ahead. Evan pulled Claire into a side street, hearts pounding in sync. "We need to split," Evan said. "They won't come after you, if I'm not with you." "Like hell I'm leaving you," Claire snapped. He cupped her face, his touch both urgent and tender. "I need you to survive this, Claire. Please." Before she could protest, Evan kissed her, a kiss that was goodbye and promise all at once. Then he was gone, disappearing into the labyrinth of the city. Claire stood frozen, adrenaline surging, but she knew this wasn't the end. Later, hidden in a friend's apartment, Claire watched as the news exploded. Headlines screamed of corruption, leaked files, criminal investigations. But Evan's name never surfaced. He had made sure of that. The world was changing, even if only slightly. But Claire's world had shifted entirely. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number. You're safer now." But stories like ours never really end. Claire smiled through the ache in her chest. Days passed, but the city never seemed to quiet down. The news had latched onto the story, spinning theories and speculations, yet no one knew the name of the person who had ignited the fire. Claire kept her head low, working remotely, while every knock on the door made her heart race. Evan was gone, or at least that's how it felt. But deep down, she knew he wasn't the type to vanish completely. It was a cold Wednesday morning when the first sign came. A package. No return address. Just a simple envelope slipped under her apartment door. Inside, a single photograph. Claire and Evan, seated at the cafe on their first meeting. On the back, a message scribbled hastily. Laurelwood. Find the key. Laurelwood. It wasn't a place Claire had thought of in years. A sleepy coastal town where her family used to vacation when she was a child. But why would Evan lead her there? Claire packed lightly. A change of clothes, her laptop, and the encrypted drive she had sworn to protect. The journey to Laurelwood felt surreal, like stepping into a forgotten memory. The town hadn't changed much. Pastel-colored shops, creaky boardwalks, and the omnipresent scent of the ocean. She booked a small room at a seaside inn, where the receptionist, an elderly woman named Rose, seemed oddly expectant. "Staying long, dear?" Rose asked, her gaze lingering on Claire. "Depends on what I find," Claire responded, trying to keep her tone casual. That evening, Claire wandered through the old town square. It was there, by pure instinct, that she found it, an antique shop with a faded sign. The Lock and Quill. Inside, the shop was a labyrinth of shelves overflowing with relics. A man appeared from behind a curtain, mid-60s, thin-framed glasses, and a knowing smile. "You're not here for the trinkets," he said, before Claire could speak. "How do you? I'm a friend of Evan's. Name's Tobias." He gestured for her to follow. "He said you'd come." Tobias led her to the back, where a large, rusted safe sat against the wall. He handed her a small brass key. "Whatever's inside, Evan trusted you with it." With a shaky breath, Claire unlocked the safe. Inside was a leather-bound journal, worn but preserved. On its cover, embossed initials. Yem. Evan's journal. Back at the inn, Claire flipped through its pages. It wasn't a diary of emotions, but a meticulous account of the hidden network Evan's father had built, the web of corruption that now entangled them. But as she read further, the journal shifted tone. It became personal. Evan's words detailed not just conspiracies, but his fears, his loneliness, the crushing weight of knowing too much, and the unbearable silence of having no one to share it with, until Claire. She reached a page marked with a crimson ribbon. "Claire, if you're reading this, it means I've failed to protect you the easy way. But I trust you'll finish what I started. The real key isn't in the files. It's in story. Tell it. Make them listen." Her hands trembled as realization dawned. The files were only part of the battle. The other, the more dangerous one, was public perception. The truth meant nothing if people weren't ready to hear it. The next day, Claire set up in a corner booth of the inn's lounge, her laptop open, Evan's journal beside her. She began to write, not a report or an exposé, but a story. Evan's story. Her story. The story of how truth gets buried beneath comfort and how silence is the greatest accomplice to corruption. But as the hours passed, Claire noticed something. She was being watched. A man, seated at the bar, pretending to read a newspaper. Another, outside by the vending machine, glancing at her reflection through the window. Her time was running out. That evening, Tobias visited her at the inn. His face was grave. "They know you're here." Claire nodded. "I figured. I can get you out. There are routes they don't know." Claire closed her laptop. "I'm not running this time." Tobias smiled faintly. "You're as stubborn as he said." Suddenly, there was a knock. 3 sharp raps. Claire's heart skipped. But it wasn't the men from outside. It was Rose, the innkeeper. "Miss Claire, you have a phone call." A man named Evan. Claire's legs nearly gave out as she rushed to the reception. She picked up the receiver. Evan. His voice, even through the static, was a balm to her frayed nerves. "You found the journal," he said.
"Good.
"But you're out of time." "Where are you? Are you safe?" "I can't say. But listen carefully. There's a broadcast channel. Independent, off-grid. They'll air your story. But you need to move now." I'm not leaving without seeing you, Claire said, voice cracking. A pause. You will. But first finish the story. For both of us. The line went dead. Tobias drove Claire through winding coastal roads, eventually stopping at an old radio station, abandoned on the surface, but alive within. A small team of rogue journalists had set up camp, working tirelessly to expose stories the mainstream media wouldn't touch. Claire handed them the journal and her script. We'll air it tonight, one of them promised. As she watched the team prepare the broadcast, Claire felt an odd calm. This was the culmination of everything. But she also felt an emptiness. Evan was still out there, fighting shadows. The broadcast was raw, unpolished, but it hit like a hammer. Claire's voice narrated over visuals of documents, network diagrams, and snippets of Evan's handwritten notes. She didn't just lay out facts. She told a human story of a son trapped by his father's sins, of a woman who stumbled into a conspiracy, and of the unseen battles fought in the margins of society. Within hours, the video spread. First to independent forums, then larger platforms. People started asking questions, demanding answers. But with visibility came danger. That night, as Claire prepared to leave the station, a black SUV blocked the exit. Tobias swore under his breath. We're out of time. But before panic could take root, another car screeched into view. The door flung open. Evan. Get in, he shouted. Claire didn't hesitate. As they sped away, Claire glanced at Evan. His face was bruised, eyes bloodshot, but his smirk was unmistakable. Missed me? He asked, trying to keep it light. I should kill you. Claire shot back, half laughing, half sobbing. They drove in tense silence, navigating back roads until they reached a cliffside overlooking the ocean. It was the kind of place that felt detached from the world. They sat on the hood, watching waves crash below. I thought you were dead, Claire whispered. I almost was, Evan admitted. But I had to see you finish it. They sat like that for a while. Words unnecessary. Evan turned to her, a hint of vulnerability breaking through. Claire, after this, I don't know if there's a life for me. I've burned too many bridges. Claire reached for his hand. Maybe we build new ones. Together. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and for once, allowed himself to believe in something beyond survival. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, they weren't fighting alone. The broadcast had unleashed a storm. Within 24 hours, Claire's exposé was circulating on major independent news channels. Anonymous forums dissected every detail, while social media lit up with theories. Claire had expected fear, retaliation, but she hadn't expected the sheer power of collective outrage. People cared. Yet, the calm didn't last. The cabal Evan's father had built wasn't going to sit idle. A counter-narrative emerged quickly, painting Claire and Evan as disgruntled former employees, accusing them of fabricating evidence for attention. Trolls flooded their mentions, calling them frauds, liars. The smear campaign was brutal, coordinated, and relentless. But they had anticipated it. Evan paced in the safe house, a small cabin deep in the woods outside Laurelwood, as Claire monitored their mentions online. They're moving faster than we thought, Claire said, scrolling through the growing number of slanderous articles. Evan slammed his fist into the table. They're scared. That's good. It means they're vulnerable. But we're also exposed. They know where we are. Claire's voice was calm, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed her anxiety. Tobias entered, holding a burner phone. Call came in, Tobias said grimly. An offer. Claire's brows furrowed. An offer? They want a meeting. A ceasefire. Their words. Evan snorted. That's not how this works. But Tobias held up a hand. They're sending Emily. The room went silent. Claire's chest tightened. Emily, the woman who had once been Evan's closest confidant and betrayer. The meeting was set in an abandoned railway station at dusk. Claire stood beside Evan, heart racing, as Emily approached with a kind of grace that made her impossible to ignore. Dressed in black, she looked like a shadow that had learned to walk among people. You're reckless, Evan, Emily said, her voice laced with both admiration and disdain. "And you're predictable," Evan shot back. Emily's eyes softened as she glanced at Claire. "And you must be Claire. I've heard about you." Claire held her ground. "I'd be flattered, but I know where compliments from you lead." Emily smiled faintly. "You think you've won. You haven't. These people, they don't lose. They wait." "We're not waiting," Evan replied. "And we're not stopping." Emily sighed, as if burdened by the weight of inevitability. "You're brave. Stupid, but brave. I came to give you a choice. Disappear now and you'll live. Stay and you'll burn." Claire stepped forward.
Funny.
"That's exactly what we want. To burn this whole thing down." For the first time, Emily's mask slipped. Just a fraction. A flicker of something, regret, maybe. "Then I hope you're ready," she said, turning on her heel and vanishing into the dusk. That night, back at the cabin, the mood was tense. Every shadow outside felt like a threat. Every gust of wind could be boots on the ground. Evan stood by the window, lost in thought. "You still love her," Claire said softly. Evan didn't turn. "Part of me always will. She was my mirror.
She showed me who I was.
And what I could be. But you're my compass, Claire." Claire walked over, resting her head against his back. "Then let's navigate out of the storm." The next phase required boldness. Claire and Evan decided to go live. No more faceless videos or anonymous leaks. They needed to own the narrative, show their faces, tell their story directly to the world. It was Tobias who secured the live feed, an old pirate broadcast channel that couldn't be easily traced or shut down. The broadcast went live at 8 p.m. sharp. Claire and Evan sat side by side, the dim light casting long shadows behind them. Claire began, her voice steady, but impassioned. "We are not whistleblowers. We are not conspiracy theorists. We are people who were lied to, manipulated. And when we tried to walk away, we were hunted. Tonight, we're telling you everything." Evan followed, detailing the web of shell companies, data laundering, and the political puppeteering orchestrated by his father's empire. But the key wasn't in the dry facts, it was in the human cost. They spoke of lives ruined, of voices silenced, of the price of truth. Viewers poured in by the thousands. Comments flooded the stream. Claire could feel the shift. The people weren't just watching, they were listening. But then the feed glitched. A sudden blackout. Claire's heart sank. "We're being jammed," Tobias muttered, scrambling at the equipment. Evan slammed his fist down. "Not now, not now." But Claire had a thought. She grabbed her phone. Mobile data. Social media live. They can jam frequencies, but they can't shut down the entire internet. Within minutes, they were live again, this time, directly to the masses through Claire's personal account. It was raw, shaky, but real. And people responded. The view count skyrocketed. But with exposure came consequences. By midnight, they heard the whir of helicopters. The glow of headlights in the distance. "They found us," Tobias said, locking the cabin doors. Evan pulled Claire aside. "We need to split up. They won't expect that." Claire grabbed his hand tightly.
No.
"We finish this together." Evan looked at her, admiration glowing in his eyes. "Then let's make them remember our names." What followed was chaos. Drones circled above. Men in black descended upon the cabin. But Evan and Claire had already slipped into the dense woods, navigating through hidden trails Tobias had mapped out years ago. They reached an old ranger station, where a backup satellite uplink was hidden. Claire reconnected the feed, broadcasting the live footage of the mercenaries storming the cabin. The world was watching. This wasn't a story anymore. It was a movement. As dawn broke, an unexpected ally emerged. News vans, independent journalists, even sympathetic politicians started arriving at the scene. The authorities could no longer contain the narrative. Claire and Evan walked out of the woods, hand in hand, facing the crowd of cameras. The questions flew at them. Who's behind this? Why risk everything? What's next? Claire stepped forward. Truth isn't safe. It's not convenient, but it's necessary. And today, It's louder than their lies. By noon, their story had gone viral. Evan's father's empire was crumbling under scrutiny. Investigations were launched, resignations rolled in. The people had spoken. But the war wasn't over. That evening, Claire and Evan sat on the hood of Tobias's old truck, watching the sunset over Laurelwood's cliffs. Evan broke the silence. "You think we won?" Claire smiled. "We started winning. That's enough for today." He pulled her close, and for the first time in months, they allowed themselves to breathe. The world had shifted, yet in the quiet streets of Laurelwood, it felt hauntingly the same. It had been 3 days since the broadcast shattered the McFarlane dynasty's grip. 3 days of sleepless nights, of interviews, of cautious movements. But Claire knew it was far from over. She sat on the porch of Tobias's cabin, nursing a cup of black coffee as the morning fog curled around the trees. Evan emerged from inside, his face carrying both exhaustion and a faint glimmer of triumph. "The Attorney General just confirmed a federal investigation," Evan said, sitting beside her. Claire sighed, the weight of everything they had endured pressing down on her. "Do you think it'll be enough?" Evan looked into the distance. "It's a start. But men like my father don't vanish that easily. They retreat, regroup." Claire rested her head on his shoulder. "Then we stay loud. We stay visible." Claire sat under blinding studio lights, facing a polished anchor with a rehearsed smile. "Claire Monroe, you've become the face of a movement. How does it feel knowing your story has sparked a global conversation?" Claire's smile was polite, but her eyes were sharp. "I don't want to be a symbol. I want accountability. This isn't about heroism. It's about basic human rights." The anchor pressed on. "And what about Evan McFarlane?"
Public opinion is torn.
Some see him as a whistleblower, others as a traitor to his own family. Claire's reply was measured. "Evan chose truth over comfort. If that makes him a traitor, then I hope we all become traitors." In the shadowed study of a sprawling mansion, William McFarlane sat surrounded by his remaining allies. The empire was fractured, but not defeated. "They think exposure is victory," McFarlane sneered, swirling a glass of scotch. "But public outrage is fickle. They'll move on." One of his associates hesitated. "But sir, the paper trails are too clear. Investigations are piling up." McFarlane's smile was cold. "Then we redirect. Find a scapegoat. Preferably one with enough skeletons to bury this mess." But for the first time, cracks appeared in his command. His inner circle exchanged uneasy glances. The old fear was fading. Claire scrolled through endless messages of support, mixed with threats and warnings. The war had moved online. Evan sat opposite her, laptop open, tracing digital trails. "They're shifting assets," he said, "liquidating and moving funds offshore. They're cutting their losses." Claire's jaw clenched. "We can't let them fade into the shadows again." Evan reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "We won't. But we need allies. Real ones." Claire and Evan sat in a packed hearing room, cameras flashing as a panel of senators grilled former associates of McFarlane Enterprises. Claire watched as stone-faced executives tried to dodge questions, but the evidence was too damning. Whistleblowers had come forward. The dam had broken. When Claire was called to testify, the room fell silent. Her voice didn't waver. "I am not a politician. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just someone who saw something wrong and chose not to look away." The hearing became the catalyst. Arrests followed. Accounts were frozen. The untouchables were suddenly touchable. Claire and Evan stood on the rooftop of a modest apartment, overlooking the city that had once tried to consume them. "We did it," Claire whispered, though part of her still didn't believe it. Evan smiled, but his eyes carried a new weight. "For now, they'll rebuild. Maybe not them directly, but someone else. Power always finds a host." Claire leaned into him. "Then we stay vigilant. And maybe we live a little, too." Evan chuckled. "You living a little? That I need to see." Claire cut the ribbon of a new community center dedicated to whistleblower protection. The crowd cheered. Evan stood beside her, their hands entwined. "A year ago, We were fugitives, Claire said into the microphone. Today, we're builders. Builders of truth, of safe spaces, of futures. Reporters swarmed, but this time the questions were hopeful. Life hadn't become perfect. Threats still lingered, but they had carved out a sanctuary of resilience. Claire and Evan sat on their porch, watching fireflies dance in the twilight. Do you regret it? Evan asked softly. Claire smiled. Not for a second.
Do you?
Evan shook his head. Never. You were worth every storm. They kissed, not like a couple who had survived a war, but like two people who had chosen to keep loving no matter what. Truth doesn't come wrapped in victories. It comes in scars, in sleepless nights, in friendships forged under pressure. But in a world that thrives on silence, being loud is a revolution. Claire and Evan weren't saviors. They were just people who refused to be quiet. And sometimes, that's where the most dangerous stories begin.